I really am back. The thought hit me like lightning, rushing through every nerve. I stood exactly where I had been before. Stone walls, torchlight, the massive cushioned bed. Even with the T-Rex right in front of me this time, the thrill of actually returning stole my breath. "Hello, Tim." I froze, less from fear and more from shock, and a little confusion. The voice wasn't spoken aloud. It was in my head. No one else was in the room but me and the T-Rex, and its massive mouth hadn't moved an inch. Before I could make sense of it, heavy boots thundered down the corridor. The doors to the chamber slammed open, and armored guards burst inside, spears raised. Their eyes locked on me immediately. "There! An intruder!" one barked. The shock of being spotted snapped me into motion. My first instinct was to run, but there was nowhere to go. The room was vast, the exit blocked, and behind me was, well, a dinosaur the size of a bus. My heart hammered as the guards lowered their weapons and rushed forward. But then the T-Rex stirred. Its head rose from the bed of cushions with a low, rolling growl. The sound shook the chamber like distant thunder, dust falling from the rafters. The guards skidded to a halt mid-charge, their discipline faltering beneath that primal warning. The lead guard dropped to one knee. "Forgive us, my queen," he said quickly, bowing low. "We thought you were under threat." "Tell them you are my guest." The words struck my mind as clear as thought. My mouth went dry, but I forced them out. I'm her guest." The guards glanced at one another, confusion rippling through their ranks. The last of them slowly began lowering their weapons, uncertain. One stammered, You can speak with her?" My mind scrambled for an excuse, but before I could answer, the captain pressed, "Then what was that scream?" "Say it was a mouse." I nearly laughed at the absurdity, but the queen's tone left no room to argue. "It was a mouse," I said. The guards instantly tensed, snapping back into formation. Hands flashed in practiced signals, silent orders passing between them as the doors burst open again and a robed figure strode in, staff in hand. The mage's sharp eyes caught the exchange the moment he entered. Without a word, he lifted his staff and slammed it down. A shockwave erupted across the chamber. For a split second, I was sure I was dead. The air rippled, braziers rattled, and the force slammed into my chest. I staggered, bracing for pain that never came. The wave passed me through harmlessly. I gasped and patted myself down in disbelief. Arms, chest, legs, everything still there. My heart hammered, so hard it felt like it might break free of my ribs. Then a high-pitched squeak cut the silence. A mouse shot out from under a tall wardrobe near the door and bolted down the hall. The guards erupted, sprinting after it like hounds loosed from a leash. I just stood frozen, wide-eyed, when I felt something then, not words like before, more like a feeling that wasn't mine. Surprise? Then amusement? Was I sensing her feelings? The queen's eye lingered on me, and I caught the faintest sense of humor ripple through her. "I did not expect there to be an actual mouse. Fortune enjoys its little jokes." More footsteps thundered in the distance, voices shouting orders as the chase spread into the halls, the muffled clang of armor and the bark of commands carried back into the chamber. Then she shifted slightly, turning her head toward the doorway. At her signal, more guards entered carrying objects with careful reverence, a tall crown and an ornate collar. One dragged in a small stepladder to reach her towering height. The ladder thumped into place, and a soldier climbed up with the crown balanced in both hands. It looked absurd, this tiny human scaling rungs to reach the brow of a creature who could crush him with one snap of his jaw. Yet the guard's hands never shook. With practiced care, he set the crown between the ridges above her eye, bowed, and descended. Another guard stepped forward with the collar. Up close, it was less like jewelry and more like a piece of armor, metal worked into scales that shimmered faintly in the torchlight. When it locked around her neck with a heavy clink, I felt it. It was like the air itself thickened, pressing closer, heavy with a presence I couldn't ignore. But it wasn't physical weight. It was something else, something I'd learned to recognize in my travels.
a danger sense honed from standing too close to people or creatures far stronger than me. And in that moment, the Queen's danger level spiked to an absurd degree, as if the world itself acknowledged she was the most powerful being in the room, declaring to all, "Be afraid, be very afraid." But maybe that was just me projecting my own feelings. The others in the chamber didn't flinch or cower. They reacted with nothing but respect, and the kind of deference I'd expect for any important person. Her head lifted slightly, the collar catching the torchlight in a shimmer that made the engravings ripple like scales. I swallowed, trying to steady myself. "So that thing's an amplifier, right? Makes you stronger somehow?" Her massive eye slid to me, and through it I felt a ripple of amusement. Not mocking, more like she was impressed I'd even tried to guess. "Close," her voice rolled out. It wasn't in my head this time, but in the open air, deep yet clear, carrying a weight that filled the chamber. It was a voice anyone could hear, kind, commanding, and impossible to ignore. The guards immediately bowed lower, spines straight and faces solemn, as though the sound itself demanded it. The caller's hum settled into the air, and with it the Queen seemed satisfied. She lifted her head, her voice carrying clearly now. "You are my guest. I will show you my halls." Now that she'd said it, her size was once again shoved to the front of my mind. I glanced around the chamber properly this time, and it hit me there was no door, no passageway, big enough for her to have gotten in here. Unless the builders used magic sledgehammers, the whole thing didn't make sense. Realization dawned. I was about to see something new, another first in a life already full of them. I tried not to let the shock settle permanently on my face as her body began to change. Scale shimmered, light rippling across her form, and she seemed to fold inward, condensing. In moments, the massive T-Rex that had filled the chamber stood only a little taller than my dad, who was just under 6 feet. She was still a dinosaur in every proportion, but now she could pass through the arched doorway with ease. It didn't make her any less imposing. The sharpness in her gaze and the weight of her presence still pressed down on me, a reminder that size didn't define power. Still, I couldn't help thinking how strange she'd look inside a normal house, her tail and bulk crashing into walls and door frames. Only here, in the wide halls of a castle, did her smaller size feel natural. She caught my look of shock and lowered her head slightly. "One of my talents," she said, keeping it deliberately vague, as though that was all the explanation I was going to get. She moved toward the doorway. Even at this reduced size, every step carried weight. Minor tremors rippled through the stone beneath my feet, subtle but impossible to ignore. Her stride was smooth, almost a glide, but the mass behind it pressed down on everything around her.
"Young man," the voice cut across my drifting thoughts, sharp yet tinged with amusement. "Didn't anyone ever tell you it's not polite to think about a lady's weight?" My face went pale, heat crawling up my neck. She couldn't actually read my thoughts, could she? Yet the glimmer of humor brushing against me through the bond made it clear she wasn't offended. Still, I shut my mouth and tried not to look like I'd just been caught stealing cookies from the jar. Her eye lingered on me, the sense of amusement fading, replaced with something heavier, regret. She lowered her head, her voice dropping into something meant only for me. "That is the bond. It should not have worked, not without your knowledge, and certainly not with me." I blinked, unsure if I'd heard her right. "It links more than words. It allows thoughts, feelings, even memories to be shared as if they were your own, and with it strength and power. But you must understand, the bond between my bloodline and a human is dangerous. Only one in recent memory managed it, and that was with my mate. Even he nearly died from the strain."
I swallowed, my throat suddenly dry. Then, why me? Her gaze softened, and I felt the regret brush against me again, like a shadow of her thoughts. I only meant to test your presence when you appeared, a glance, no more. Even a failed attempt would have told me who you were. It is harmless, something I have used to guide negotiations. But instead it took hold, without ritual, without intent. It should not have worked. I stared up at her, the honesty in her tone making my stomach twist. But through the bond I felt it, her sadness, her admiration, her certainty that she had wronged me. And instead of anger, I found myself nodding. It's okay. I don't think I really understand it, especially if it takes years to train for. But something tells me it's quite the gift. The queen dipped her head slowly, as though marking the moment. I am glad you are not offended, and you are right. The greatest heroes in our recorded history were bonded. In time, as you learn more, you will see the benefits, too. I looked down, then admitted quietly, Thing is, I don't usually get to come back to the same world. I'm worried I won't be able to return here again. She paused at that, one massive claw pressing against the stone, the scrape echoing faintly in the chamber. For a moment she seemed lost in thought. Then I will have our records searched. There are old tales of travelers. Perhaps they are not so different from you. The two guards pulled the doors open wide, and the queen glided forward without slowing. I hurried after her. The corridor beyond stretched long and high, its walls lined with sweeping murals painted in bold strokes. Instead of ordinary flames, crystal torches jutted from iron sconces, each one glowing with a steady blue-white light. Their glow didn't flicker. It was smooth like a lamp back home, and it spilled evenly across the walls, catching every brushstroke. The colors were startlingly vivid for their age, as though the paint had been renewed with care, generation after generation.
At first, I thought they were decorations, patterns, symbols, but as we walked, the truth took shape. Towering figures filled the walls. They were dinosaurs, painted in regal poses, each distinct in appearance. Some bore crests, others carried scars or unique patterns across their hides. Crowns and banners marked them as rulers, while the backgrounds told fragments of their reigns. Battles, councils, parades, different yet connected. The curve of a jawline, the amber glow of their eyes. They weren't just beasts, they were a dynasty. I slowed, pointing without meaning to. That's your family? The queen inclined her head. My bloodline, kings and queens before me. We walked farther, the murals unfolding like pages in a book, and then we came to one that spanned nearly an entire wall. I stopped. The queen stood at the center, painted in her youth, scales a brighter bronze, her gaze sharp. Beside her was another tyrannosaur, larger still, his head scarred across the snout, his crown painted with streaks of red. Around them raged a battle I couldn't mistake. Armies of humans in shining armor, banners raised high, clashing with dinosaurs and hybrids who fought to hold the line. The second T-Rex towered at the forefront. His jaws clamped down on painted war machines, his tail sweeping soldiers aside like they were nothing. Hybrids rallied at his feet, their weapons glowing with strange light, holding ranks against the tide. And there, astride his massive neck, sat a single human figure, small compared to the beast he rode, yet painted with such detail it was impossible to miss. His armor gleamed with blue and gold, a spear raised high, light spilling from its point like a second sun. The scene was awe-inspiring, larger than life. Epic, I muttered under my breath. It was, the queen said softly. And then the bond stirred. Her memory opened, and suddenly I was there.
The earth quaked beneath my feet, the air filled with smoke and fire. Carnoth's roar split the sky as he tore through the advancing lines, Caldus steady on his back, spear blazing arcs of light. The tide of soldiers crashed forward, mages hoisting jagged crystals that pulsed with dangerous energy. Ahead of me, Carnoth's roar thundered across the field. Thisara, regroup the men. I will hold them. The queen's reply came sharp and desperate. Reinforcements are almost here. Carnoth snapped his jaws through a siege engine, tossing it aside like kindling. Good. Return with them, and let us end this. The memory blurred then, details slipping like water through my fingers. I caught glimpses, the blinding flash of crystals detonating, a roar of pain that shook the ground, and Thisara's heart twisting with rage and grief. But it was no longer crisp, no longer sharp, only fragments, then nothing. Back in the corridor, I came to myself with a start, hand pressed against the queen's side as though trying to steady her. Heat shot to my face, and I yanked it back, blushing furiously. She didn't scold me. Her gaze was distant, heavy. Carnoth, my mate, and upon his back Sir Caldus, one of the few humans strong enough to survive the bond. Together, they turned the tide when none else could. His last battle shattered Primera's advance and forced them to agree to a truce. If not for the massed explosion, he may have survived, long enough for us to return and crush them, together.
She paused, the torch crystals humming faintly in the silence. They learned an important lesson that day, not to underestimate us. But they learned it well. Now they rebuild, waiting for their chance to strike again. I swayed, knees suddenly weak, my vision tilting. The queen's head lowered sharply, concern in her amber eye. Was the vision too much for you? I forced a shaky laugh and shook my head. No, I'm glad you shared it. That feeling, it just means I'll probably shift back soon. So soon? She replied. I swallowed hard, forcing the words out. I don't know how or why. It's different every world. Sometimes I stay for what feels like years. Other times it's short, like it seems this time will be. My sight blurred again, the corridor sliding like watercolors. Isara's voice cut through gently. Then we must not waste the time left to us. A relic has been found, one tied to the old legends of travelers. They are bringing it now. We waited in uneasy silence, and I tried to keep my footing steady. To distract me, or maybe herself, the queen spoke again. The world of legends was said to be full of wonders, buildings of glass and steel that touched the sky, roads that shone with light, carrying chariots that moved without beasts, gardens suspended in the air, waters that ran through their very walls. As she spoke, images flashed unbidden in my mind. Skylines, highways, glowing city streets from Earth. Her head snapped toward me, shock rippling through the bond. I saw them, your memories. They are the same, so similar to the descriptions in our oldest texts. Before I could answer, footsteps pounded toward us. A guard and a robed scholar hurried into view, breathless, carrying something wrapped in cloth. They knelt, opening it to reveal a disc of worked metal, etched with patterns that shimmered faintly in the torchlight. At its center was a symbol that resembled the curve of an anchor. We can confirm it is tied to the travelers, though its full purpose eludes us. This mark, he tapped the anchor, suggests it was meant to hold, to fix. My vision blurred again, worse this time. I staggered, and Thysaura's tail swept lightly against my back, steadying me. I swallowed. I'm willing to give it a shot, if that's okay. Thysaura's eye held mine for a moment. Then she gave a slow nod. The scholar produced a pin, pressing it into my palm. A drop of blood into the impression here. He indicated a groove at the center of the relic. My fingers trembled, the queen's tail still bracing me as I pricked my skin. A bead of red welled, then slid into the relic's waiting channel. The disc flared with light. A flash, a shift, and then, boom. A thunderclap split the air, rattling walls and shaking my bed. I blinked, gasping. I was sitting upright in my room at home, sheets twisted around me. The relic was in my hands, glowing faintly, my hair standing on end as though I'd stuck a fork in an outlet. The door burst open. My parents rushed in, wide-eyed. "Tim, what was that?" I stared at them, still stunned, then slowly grinned. "You won't believe where I just was."
And that's where we leave Tim for now. If you thought today's encounter raised the stakes, just wait, because things are only going to get more complicated from here. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Every bit of support helps us keep unraveling this story. And hey, dropping a comment might just level up your perception stat, which you'll definitely need for what's coming next. See you in the weave.